Kyle. So today, Thursday, April 8th, we are going to be talking about comma rules 1 to 3, and then you'll be doing a vocab choice board to review your vocab again, because I want you to remember these words and be able to use them in your own language. So you will understand today how to use commas appropriately in lists, to link independent clauses in compound sentences, and after introductory statements. We'll get the first 3 rules of about 9 rules. But you know, within those rules, there's even more rules and exemptions because English language is difficult. So hopefully by the time you leave today, you'll have a better understanding, if you don't already, of how to use commas. A few of you are already really good at this, so hopefully this will just be some nice review for you. And then for the vocab choice board, you'll demonstrate and understanding the first 10 vocab words by using them in context in a real or imagined story. Okay, so your first comma rule, this should be a review for most of you. Most of my students understand this rule, but we'll also talk about the Oxford comma. The first rule is to use commas to separate 3 or more words, phrases, or clauses that are written in a series. So for example, in the first bullet, you have the Constitution establishes, the legislative, executive, and judicial branches of the government. So we have 3 things in a list, essentially. Legislative, executive, and judicial. And the commas just show us that there are 3 separate words, phrases, or clauses that are in this series. All right, so we put our commas in between. Now the second comma we refer to as the Oxford comma, and it's a stylistic choice if you want to add the Oxford comma. I always add the Oxford comma because if you don't, sometimes you run into some really weird scenarios. So for example, I have a list here. My crush, the prom queen, and the cheerleading captain were in my English class. So obviously, I always put that first comma, and then the Oxford comma, like I said, is a stylistic choice. You can either put the comma here before the and, or you can leave it out. However, if I read it right now with the Oxford comma, my crush, the prom queen, and the cheerleading captain were in my English class. I'm reading this as my crush and the prom queen and the cheerleading captain, so 3 separate people were in my English class. If I take that comma out, now the statement's reading my crush, the prom queen, and the cheerleading captain. It's hard for me as the reader to tell if that's 3 separate people or if this person's crush is the prom queen and also the cheerleading captain. Okay, and to make that correct, you'd put the comma here, and then I would know that the crush was the prom queen and also the cheerleading captain. However, it just brings some confusion if you leave that out and I'm the reader. So that's why I always put the comma in, so if I run into those weird scenarios, that it's clear that that is 3 different people I'm describing, or those are 3 different people I'm describing. Okay? And if you're not here for today's lesson in class, you will do a self-paced Nearpod, so you'll be adding the commas to slide, it's showing up as slide 8 right now, but that might change once I move it to Nearpod. So on the draw it slides is where you'll be adding commas based on the rule that precedes it. So the next rule, you have to have some background information first. So we're going to talk about independent clauses first. And this shouldn't be anything new, but I just want to talk about the basic parts of a sentence, because this will help you understand comma use and varying your sentence structure. So independent clause is a group of words that contains a subject, which is a noun or a pronoun. So it might be a proper noun like Mrs. Rosen, that would be capitalized, or it might be a pronoun. So my pronoun is she. And also your independent clause includes a verb. So that is an action or state of being word that, and then you'll have your independent clause, which expresses a complete thought. So essentially, you should know by now what a complete sentence is, and that's what an independent clause is. It's another word for complete sentence. So an example is the sentence, Mrs. Rosen ran. That's considered an independent clause. It's a complete sentence. All it has is a subject and a verb, but that's all a complete sentence needs. That sentence is also a lie because I don't run. The second example is he is feeling tired. That use of is is what we call a state of being verb. So it's just like, I think it's named appropriately, a state of being verb. He just kind of is there. He's just, that's his state of being. He is, now what is he doing? He is feeling tired. Okay, so you have your independent clause, which is a complete sentence. You also have compound sentences. Your compound sentences are when you have two or more independent clauses joined by a coordinated conjunction. And coordinated conjunction are connector words that happen within sentences. So, and, if, or, nor, but, yet, so. So my example is the boys went to the park and they liked the animals. So you'll notice I have a complete sentence before the end, the boys went to the park, and a complete sentence or complete independent clause after the end. Now if I have a complete sentence before that and a complete sentence after, then I know that I need to put a comma before my conjunction. What's interesting is I can also briefly show you how to use a semicolon with the same example, which I don't want to get into too much, but it's the perfect opportunity. So if I wanted to, I have two sentences. So technically I could delete this and we would have two sentences, right? The boys went to the park, they liked the animals. These two sentences are linked, so they relate to one another. So I could put a comma here and add the and, right? Or my other option would be, because they are connected, to put a semicolon. And we'll talk about semicolon rules again in case you're missing it, but just another option. Okay, so comma rule number 2. When you have compound sentences, you want to use commas to separate the independent clauses that are joined by any of the coordinated conjunctions. And I don't care that you remember independent clause, compound sentence, coordinated conjunctions. I just have to be able to use that language for you to understand. So again, for my examples, the student explained her question. That's a full sentence. The instructor didn't seem to understand. Also a full sentence. So when those two independent clauses are joined by a coordinated conjunction, you put a comma before that coordinated conjunction. And same thing with the next one. Yesterday was her brother's birthday, so she took him out to dinner. Again, you could do the semicolon trick here too. Yesterday was her brother's birthday, she took him out to dinner. Those ideas are related and they're both complete sentences. So you could add a semicolon instead if you wanted for a sexy sentence. All right, continuing on. Now you're going to add commas again on the Nearpod. All right, finally, last comma rule. We also have, so we've talked about independent clauses and joining them to make compound sentences. We also have complex sentences. Complex sentences contain dependent and independent clauses. So a dependent clause also contains a subject and a verb. So I think I did my subjects in green, my verb in yellow. However, it's not a complete idea. So what you see in purple here is my dependent clause. After she went to dinner, and then you get into your independent clause. Alex decided to watch a movie at home. So again, remember your independent clause is a complete sentence. So if I look at this, what's in blue, Alex decided to watch the movie at home. That's an independent clause. It functions by itself. It's independent. It don't need no man. All right, it's good by itself. Your dependent clause is dependent upon the independent clause to function as a complete idea. So after she went to dinner, not an independent clause, not a complete thought, so it's depending on the independent clause to make it cohesive. So it depends on that independent clause. And often you can identify the dependent clause by those words after, although, because, before, even though, in order to, though, less, and those are subordinating conjunctions. Again, you'll probably never remember all these grammar terms. I don't even remember most of them when I walk away from this, but it's to help us gain the understanding of comma use. So finally, rule number 3 for comma use is after introductory clauses, phrases, or words that come before the main clause or the independent clause, you need to put a comma. So when you have the dependent clause before the independent clause, you put a comma before the independent clause. The way I think about it, I said clause and now I'm talking about cat. That's funny. The way I think about it is, so my main sentence, again, you have to have a subject and a verb in every sentence. The cat scratched. The cat is the subject. Scratched is what he's doing. That's the verb. So I know that's the main subject and verb of my sentence. So whatever comes before it, I need a comma after that to signal like, oh, hey, this is the real start of my sentence. This is who the sentence is about. Because her alarm clock was broken. Let's just change this to a name. Alyssa. It's a popular name. Because her alarm clock was open, Alyssa was late for class. So this is about Alyssa. So the comma needs to come before her name. All right, so we always have some weird rules, though, when we're in English class. So you don't put a comma after the main clause when the dependent clause follows it. So sometimes your dependent clause comes after your independent clause, which is kind of weird. And honestly, I don't like that format. I would tell you not to do that. I would tell you to always put your dependent clause first. Usually it makes more sense that way. However, if you're trying to vary your sentence structure, the cat scratched at the door while I was eating. I don't know, you kind of feel like it doesn't need a comma there. So it would be incorrect to put a comma there if the dependent clause comes after your independent clause. However, if there's an example of extreme contrast, then you do put a comma. Not confusing at all. And don't worry about some of these weird rules, because most of the time if you put a comma, or if you didn't put a comma when the dependent clause follows the independent clause, you're going to be right like 99% of the time. So this is a weird exception. But the extreme contrast is the sentence that she was still quite upset, although she had won the Oscar. So you wouldn't expect someone to be upset having won an Oscar, like sad upset. So in that case, since there's extreme contrast, you would use a comma. Not confusing at all, right? Thanks, English language, for being crazy. All right, this is just a continuation of that, adding commas after introductory clauses, phrases, or words. B says common phrases that should be followed by a comma include participle, infinitive phrases, absolute phrases, non-essential positive phrases, long prepositional phrases. So I'll say it again. Don't worry about understanding what an appositive phrase is, even though we've learned those. Absolute phrases, infinitive phrases. Just know if you have an introductory phrase that before your main subject and verb you want to put a comma. And then this one does apply to you. After any transitional or introductory phrases, you would always include a comma. So words like however, furthermore, still, you would put a comma after them. Okay? And that's one a lot of you aren't doing, so I think even if you can remember that, you'll be much improved. All right, and then on the Nearpod, you will practice this again. We'll go over those in class if you are in class. And then when you finish, you're going to move on to the vocab choice board, which is under week 28. So go to week 28, pull that up under module week 28. It says vocabulary review choice board. I'm just going to pull it up on my computer and drag it over. To review the words we've learned this year, there's 10 of them. You need to do one option from the first row. So the first is to create a meme for one vocab word. The second is to write a short rhyming poem using at least 5 vocab words. And it must make sense in the context of the poem. And then you need to do another option from the second row. So either write a current news event using at least 8 words. So you're pretending you're a news reporter. Or you can do a creative story using the words you learned this year, using at least 8 of the vocab words. And I do have prompts for those of you who like prompts. If you don't want to use a prompt, you just want to write your own creative story, or maybe even continue one that you started earlier this year, that's cool by me. Vocab words and definitions are at the bottom of the page, and submit when you finish.